years, I have come to appreciate this story and relate to it personally in ways that one might not expect, because the story is so fantastical. Here's the picture. With his three closest disciples, Peter, James, and John, Jesus has gone up the mountain to pray. There is some debate about what mountain this might have been, which is not precisely identified in New Testament writings. The traditional location, as Jolene just told us, is Mount Tabor, where the Church of the Transfiguration is now located. One of the funny little things that I read is that one of the early fathers of the church decided that it must be this one rather than the other one I'm about to tell you about, because the other one would have been too much to climb. But in fact, I think the more likely location may be Mount Hermon, which is the highest peak near Caesarea Philippi, which the Bible does identify as the region of this story, which actually goes even more to make the point that Jolene was making, that this was quite a climb. I don't care that much about which one is right, because the point is that Jesus goes up the mountain to pray. He goes to a place that is apart, removed from his everyday setting and normal traffic. In a splendor of light, Jesus is joined on the mountaintop by Moses, who first delivered God's law, and Elijah, the prophet expected as the herald of a new age, when the Messiah shall come. Jesus is joined by the agent of delivering God's love and law, and the one who points to the fulfillment of God's love and law, the new age of God's justice, mercy, and peace. We are meant to recognize and understand, I think, that Jesus and his ministry are the connection and the way to fulfillment of the law and coming of the new age, which is borne out by two immediate responses to this awesome meeting. Peter saying that we should set up tents or tabernacles for the veneration of this revelation, and the voice of God, by which the disciples were overcome with fear, the story says, like knocked down with fear. God's voice saying, "This is my Son, the beloved. Listen to him." Followed by Jesus, now on his own again, with Moses and Elijah gone, Jesus, who came and touched the disciples and said, "Don't be afraid, but tell no one about this vision until after the Son of Man has been raised from the dead." What I want to ask you to do with me today is to consider the question that sets up this drama. It's hinted at with the note that you find in the text for today that Matt referred to earlier. This scene comes 6 days after Peter's confession in Caesarea Philippi, when he says to Jesus, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." We tend to make our reading of the Bible all about that answer. You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God. All the collection and editing of the story seems to be oriented toward us recognizing and following that point. The Messiah, the Son of the living God. The good news that transforms our lives. But I think the question is just as important. Peter's confession is response to a question Jesus asks in the preceding chapter: who do people say that I am? And I want you to consider that that may be more than a rhetorical question on his part. I want you to consider it as a real question, as a search for identity, meaning, purpose, working it out. And this is not the first time he is asked. What is the sojourn and temptation in the wilderness, if not asking that question? Who am I? What am I about? What am I called to? What is it really that gives my life meaning and purpose, come what may? How am I connected to the greater? It's a question I'm pretty sure we have all asked, and I'm absolutely sure that we should all be asking. Who am I? What am I about? What am I for? What gives my life its meaning, purpose, and direction? Could it be that Jesus' journey up that mountain, like his sojourn and temptation in the wilderness before it, could it be that these are moments of a person on a vision quest? I don't think it has to be a mountain. One of my favorite theologians as a student, Robert McAfee Brown, refers to them as creative dislocations. Moments that you've had where you're not just looking out at the forest and the canyon and the mountains, but you are moved. Oh my God. It could be in service that you've engaged in. Being in a place where you are not normally, with people among whom you would not normally have commerce, connecting with them in ways that you would have never expected, and finding in that connection that you become more. Oh my God. It happened for me several times, but one time when I was serving in Zambia, and I stumbled on a village clearly in distress with my companions. Interestingly enough, there were 3 of them. I don't know what it was. It could have been most anything. I suspect that it was something we didn't know exactly what to call or how to trace at that time, and that this was a village at the epicenter of the outbreak, dying of AIDS. And what I remember from that moment, with so much death and destruction around, what I remember most clearly from that moment was the children playing a game. Quietly, to be sure, but playing a game with stones. Being children. And as children do, giggling every once in a while. I remember that moment of such horror and such innocent delight. Seeing the truth connected in a way I had never seen before. And recognizing so much more than I had ever dared to hope. And having my breath taken away, thinking, oh my God. It's the quest many of you have been on. It's a quest that all of us should be on. And we find it not just in the mountaintop or not just in exotic international excursions, though those help. They really take us outside of ourselves and we can see things that we never saw before. But they happen in your everyday encounters with the stranger, with the alien, with the person in need, with the woman who's flaked out underneath a tree just off the sidewalk downtown, to whom you can give an orange and a blanket, with the person who looks like they need help, and you're not quite sure how, but you find the courage to connect with them. And in that connection, between the law that we know we have been given, to love the Lord our God with all our heart and mind and strength, and our neighbor as ourselves, and the fulfillment of that law, living it in the world, changing our society, changing our community toward the fulfillment of that law. And in those encounters, if you pay attention, knowing that it takes your breath away, and you think, oh my God. I think sometimes the biblical writers, in their great care to have us follow the point of the story and the delivery of the good news, that sometimes they obscure for us the humanity of how it comes. Jesus struggled. We see that all throughout the story. Jesus struggled. This wasn't just all a given for him. It was an ongoing revelation and calling to meaning and purpose, and finding the courage along the way to live into it, to be brave, and to look at the world around him. It's suffering and that energy and truth of love and life that will not go away, that wants to be affirmed, that calls us to the redemption of all the rest. Thinking, oh my God. I suspect all of you have such a moment. On a mountain or in an unexpected place or somehow apart, out of your normal way. A creative dislocation where you see what you knew and what you hope come together in ways that are so much larger than you might have dared to hope. I want you to go there now. Close your eyes. In all the places and times of this world, God is there, calling you to love, to transformation, to remember and fulfill what we have been given. And the last word is, yeah, not so much the talking, the doing. Tell others the story by living it with them. To the glory of God. Amen.